Welcome to this course on C programming with puzzles from in 28 minutes. Let's start with a question. How do you want to learn to drive? Do you want to sit at home, read about it, and watch somebody drive? Will it really work? I'm sure it wouldn't. Programming is very similar. We have created this course with a lot of hands-on examples, and what's more, we use more than 100 puzzles to illustrate advanced concepts. In this video, let's look at arrays with a lot of examples and puzzles. Let's now learn about an important concept in programming called arrays. A-R-R-A-Y-S, arrays. Before going into arrays, let's understand why we need arrays. What if we don't have arrays? What would happen? Let's see an example right now. What we have in here is three scores of the top three batsmen in a team. So I'm storing them in score 1 is 6, score 2 is 15, score 3 is equal to 145. So the top three batsmen in the team had scored these runs. And I want to find out how many of the top three batsmen in the team scored centuries. So basically I want to find out how many of them are scores of 100 and above. So if score 1 is 6, score 2 is 15, score 3 is 145, only score 3 is a century because it's greater than or equal to 100. So that's exactly what I want to find out. I've written a small program to do that. The program looks something of this kind. So I have a variable called count which has a value of 0. So initially I'm having value of 0 and I'm checking if score 1 is greater than 99 or it's the same as saying greater than or equal to 100. So if it's greater than 99 or greater than equal to 100, it's really the same because score is an integer, score 1 is an integer variable. So if score 1 is greater than equal to 100 or it's greater than 99, then I'm incrementing the count. So let's say score 1 had a value of 150, the count would be incremented. Score 1 has a value of 6, so this value will not be incremented, so it will remain 0. It comes here, I'm doing the same check on score 2, 99. Score 3 again is 99. Score 2, score 3 we do the same check and increment the count again, and at the end we print number of centuries. So if I run this program now, what's the output? How many centuries? Score 3 is the only one which is a century, so it prints as 1. Let's say I had 106 in here. Then 2 of the 3 batsmen had scored a century, and so what would be the output? Yep, you're right. It's number of centuries is 2. So that's basically the thing. So now you have number of centuries is 2. Now let's say instead of the top 3 batsmen, I want to do this analysis for top 4 batsmen. So I would need to add in another variable. Score 4 is equal to, let's say, 23. I want to include the score 4 also in. I have to do the same condition, repeat the same code again. Score 4 is greater than 99, count is equal to count plus 1, and then I'm ready to run the program. So now run as local application. Okay, now I'm ready for score 4. Imagine if I have to keep adding keep adding logic for each of the variables separately. A cricket team usually has 11 members. So if I have 11 different variables to store the scores of individual batsmen, then it makes it very difficult. That's where the concepts of arrays comes into picture, and also the concept of loops. Now we'll use these two things to solve this particular problem. So let's get started with arrays. Instead of doing something of this kind, score 1 is equal to 106, score 2 is equal to 15, score 3 is equal to 145, and score 4 is equal to 23, what we can do is I can create an array. The syntax for array is something of this kind. Int, what does it contain? And I want to have scores. The name of the variable, name of the array variable is scores. The way you differentiate between an array and a normal variable is by introducing these brackets, square brackets. With this square, like if you put a square bracket, open square bracket and a closed square bracket, and say is equal to, and put in all the scores that you would want to put. So I would want to have 106, comma 15, comma 145, comma 20. This is what is called an array. before we go into this particular logic in here, let's spend some time understanding the different things about an array. So I have created an array. If you look at it, the way we created it is scores, open square bracket, close square bracket is equal to, within braces, I put in the different values I would want to store in an array. The values which I want to store in this particular array are 106, 15, 145, and 23. Now that we learned about this course array, how to create an array, let's focus on learning a few more things about the array. First thing we would want to learn is how do we assign, or how to read values from an array. I have a value 15 in here. How do I read that? How do I get that value out? And the second one is how to set values into an array. And the third one, which we want to understand about an array, is how to find length of the array. So here there are 4 elements in this particular array, right? So how do I find the length of an array? So that's the next question we would want to handle. Subsequent to this, I want to understand what is the default value in an array. So if I don't assign any values to an array, what would be the default value that is assigned to a particular thing? Last thing which we want to understand is, what if I try to read what if I try to read, or I try to bite more than I can chew? What do I mean? What I really mean is, here there are 4 elements. What will happen if I try to read the 10th element of this array? What value will it? Those are the answers. Those are the questions we'll try to answer now. So first question is how to read values from an array. How do I read the fact that I want to get the value 106 out of this, or 145 out of this? How do I read it? First thing you need to understand is indexing. A lot of programming languages use something called a zero indexing. So that basically means the first element of the array is index 0. The second element is index 1. The third element is index 2. So basically the index starts with 0 and goes in an increasing order. Let's say I want to read 15. I want to print the value of 15. So printf %d, comma, what should be the value in here? That's the question. Where do I want to read the value from? I want to read the value from scores. And anytime you talk about an array, you can always think about square brackets. So I use the square brackets. Within the square brackets, what should be the value? The value should be the value of the index. So if I want to read 15, the value of the index is 1. So I put scores of 1. Let's run this program and see if it works fine. There you go. There you see the value 15. So now you can think and tell me how I can read a value 23. Yep, you're right. It's 3. 23. And the first element of the array, 106, I can read it by using this. Aha, 106. There you go. So that's how you read values from an array. Now, I want to change the value of a specific thing in the array. How do I do that? The way you do that in C is exactly the same. So if, let's say I want to set the value for the first element, scores of 0, I want to change it from 106 to, let's say there's a small modification in this code. They actually counted 2 runs less, so the score became 108. So I want to set the value scores of 0 as 108. Let's see what would happen. Now I'll comment out this just because we know how to print the value once. We'll try and print the value in here. That's what you see in the output. So that's exactly what I wanted to set the value of the first element to be. So now we have learned how to set the value and how to read values from an array. Next question is, how do you find length? There are 4 elements in this particular array. How do I find the length? Actually, the bad thing about this answer is actually there is no direct way of finding the length of the array. There are kind of tricky alternatives. Probably those would be little too complex for you at this point in time. So let's not discuss that. Let's just assume that whenever I want to store the length of the array, I store it in a variable. So I'll probably say scores length. For now, store the value statically. I would not really dynamically determine the length of the array, but for now I would kind of store it in a static way. So that's how to find the length of the array. The next question is what is the default value of the array? One of the things that you can do when you declare an array is also tell the size of the array. So here we said scores, and we just had an empty square brackets in here. That means we are saying the size of the array is however big the number of elements in here are. So there are 4 elements in here, so the size of this array is 4. But I want to have 10 elements in the array. So I want to have 10 elements in this array, then I can put 10 in here. So there would be 10 elements, but I'm assigning values only for 4 elements. What would be the value of the 4th element or the 5th element? So what is the default value? If I don't assign a value, what would be the value which would be assigned by C? Let's see that by using the scores of, let's print scores of 5. I want to find the 6th element in the array now. What happens? It's 0. So default value, if you declare the array as long, as a longer than how many values you initialized. Here I'm initializing 4 values, whereas I'm saying the size of the array is 10. So the rest of the 6 values would be assigned a value of 0. But if you go further down, so what if I try to bite more than I can chew? That's basically I have a 10 element array here, but I want to print the 11th element, or I want to print the 12th element. How do I do that? By saying scores of 11. So I'll just comment this out so that now what would it's printing some garbage value. So what if I try to bite more than I chew? This is what will happen. I'll get some default value, garbage value, not default, some garbage value, which is present somewhere, which is already present in that particular location. So we have not assigned the value, but we would get some garbage value which is already present in that location. So what we looked at until now is how to read value from an array. So if I want to read the 3rd element in the array, I use index 2. So I'll say scores of 2. And similarly, I can set the value as scores of 2 is equal to 15. And we saw how I'm saying this is 10 element array, but I'm initializing only 4 values. So all the rest of the 6 elements will have a default value of 0. But if you try to read a 12th element or a 13th element in a 10 element array, then you would get some garbage value. Those are the important things about an array. We will discuss more about arrays subsequently.
And the next puzzle is on your screen right now. What is the output of this particular program? Will it compile? I'm trying to create an array without saying how big it is. Will it compile? Think about it and come back. The answer is no. You cannot create an array without knowing how big it is. I put a value 5. Will this compile? Yes, it did. And no errors. So that means it compiled. But what are the values in the array right now? Let's see what the values are. What would be the values that would be printed if I use the right name of the array? Think about it and come back. As you can see, the values which are printed are all 0 except for the value 4, which is having 1, 3.
Welcome to section 3, where we are going to learn about arrays. We learn a lot about arrays through varied range of puzzles. We start with puzzles to understand the basics about arrays. Then we would understand what are character arrays and strings as well. Welcome.
The next puzzle is on your screen right now. What is the output of this particular program? Will it compile? I'm trying to create an array without saying how big it is. Will it compile? Think about it and come back. The answer is no. You cannot create an array without knowing how big it is. I put a value 5. Will this compile? What would be the output of this particular program that you see in the screen? We have an array which is not initialized, and I'm trying to print the values in that particular array. What would the output be? As you can see, the output can be garbage. I mean, if you don't initialize anything, and especially if it's an integer automatic variable, it will not be initialized at all. The earlier output was not conclusive. Let's make it 15 and let's just run this. Oops. You can see a varied range of garbage values there. So if you don't initialize an array, then expect to get garbage. However, if the array was this kind, what would you expect? So now the array is an external variable. What would be the output? If you can see, the entire thing is now 0. So every element in the array is now 0. So similar to external variables, static variables also would be initialized. So if I did something of this kind, the array would be initialized and you would see that all the values are 0. So everything is 0. The same thing, however, as we saw earlier, if I made it int marks 15, you can get garbage. I mean, whatever was in the memory at that particular point in time would come up. So it's not initialized at all. So that's the first basics about arrays. Let's move on. Let's just say I'm creating an int marks of 15 and I'm assigning one of the values to 1. This is the way you can initialize an array. So what would be the result of this? What would be the output? You can see that except for the first element, everything else is 0. The first element was initialized by us, so it's having a value, but the rest of the stuff which were not initialized by us, they would have zeros. So that's the next one. Even for automatic variables, if you give a value for one of the elements in the array using the initializer, I mean, that's the most important thing. If let's say I did something of this kind, what would be the output? Think about it. So the output is that the rest of the element would still have a lot of garbage value. So some of the values might be 0, some of the values might be garbage. Even this 0 for me represents a garbage value. So if you do this kind of initializing, only that particular element where you are initializing would be initialized. However, if I do this kind of initializing, then all the rest of the elements are guaranteed to be initialized to 0. So all the elements, if you see, are initialized to 0, except the first element which I have put a value. Now, next, if you can see, the fourth value is not really assigned. So it's only assigning the first 3 values because I'm saying the size of this array is 3. The fourth one is ignored. Actually, if I go by Dennis Ritchie's C book, it says it is an error to have too many initializers. So I would have expected it to have a error, a compilation error, but it's not giving me a compilation error. But the good thing is at least the last value, the fourth value is not initialized. That's expected because I'm saying the size of this array is 3, but I'm giving it 4 values. So when I say the size of array is 3 and I'm providing 4 values, I was expecting a compilation error. But what's actually happening is only 3 values are initialized and the fourth value, as expected, is not used to initialize that particular array. So it becomes something of this kind. So that's the entire discussion about the default values of an array. Now, let's say I want to find the size of a particular array. So I have a set of elements which are assigned. I don't know where this array is coming from, let's just say, and marks has some number of values in there. The next puzzle is how do you find out the size of the array? How many elements are there in that particular array? How do I really find out? Is there a safe way of finding that out? Think about it and come back. What you see on the screen probably is one of the possible solutions for that. So what I'm trying to do in here is do a size of marks divided by size of marks of 0. So marks of 0 is the first element. So size of marks of 0 would return the size of integer. And size of marks would return the entire size of this particular thing. So this might return, let's say 8 elements, and let's say the integer is of size 4. So it returns 32. And this would return, I would expect 4. So 32 by 4 would be 8. And that's one of the ways of doing it. Luckily, in C, marks of 0 would not throw a null pointer exception. So even if, let's just say I do something of this kind, does this really work? Empty array, marks of 0, it prints out 0. So it's not really throwing an exception as such. So it works. So if I have 3 elements in the array, it would print 3. The best, like this is really useful in case of arrays. When you don't know the size of the array, then probably you can use this kind of a construct to find out the size of an array. The other way to do that would have been to use, instead of if I know the size, type of the array, if I know the element in the array is int, then I can use int instead of marks of 0, and it would still succeed and give me the size of the array. So that's, pretty much the ways you can use to find the size of an array. This should have been one of the first puzzles in arrays, but let's just make sure that you understand this. So I have a 3-element array and I'm printing marks of 3. What would be the expected output? If you know it, if you know what's the catch in this, then you can probably go ahead and play the video. If you're not, then probably pause the video and think about it and come back. Welcome back. The output for this is garbage because in arrays the indexing starts from 0. So this is 0. Oops. Yeah, this is 1 and this is 2. So the index 0 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3, but the array only has 3 elements, and I'm trying to access the 4th element in here. Unlike Java, it's not an error here. It's just print some garbage value. Whatever is in the memory location after that earlier would get printed now. So it's kind of a garbage value. It's not really an error, but it's garbage. In this puzzle, let's look at character arrays. I have 3 examples of character arrays defined in this particular program. You can see that there's a name array, 28 minutes. I'm assigning a string, 28 minutes. Here I'm assigning characters, 28 minutes. And here I'm putting a name pointer with a star to 28 minutes. Which of these is the correct assignment if I want to assign 28 minutes to this? So let's call this 1, 2, and 3. Which of 1, 2, and 3 are correct? I'm printing the value down below. Think about it. Welcome back. Now, hopefully you thought about it. Which one of them are right? Let's print. So name array is printing 28 minutes. Name array 2 is printing 28 minutes, 28 minutes. And name pointer is printing 28. So these two are printing the right values. However, this one is not really printing the right value when I print it as a string. So what I'm doing here is I'm printing it as a string, %s. So this prints as a string. So the concepts are very simple. Actually, whether you're using a character pointer or you're using a string to initialize the array, when you create a string, the way a string is represented in memory, this is 5 characters, right? But let's just see what's the size of this particular thing. Let's just say printf %d, comma, size of 28 dots, 28. So this is, you see, there are, in this particular string, there are 5. And let's see what would be the output if I try to print the size of it. It's printing 6. This is because when C sees a string, the way actually internally a string is represented is by these 5 characters followed by a null character. So there's a null character which is defined in C, which is /0. So this /0 is stored inside the program, and this is what is a null character. So these 5 characters followed by null is what is a string in C. In this particular array, however, we didn't put a null character at the end of it. So if I'm printing this particular thing, name array2, you'd see that since there is no null character behind, what it does is it goes ahead and prints until it finds a null character. So as long as it doesn't find a null character, it keeps printing those characters. So if I really want this to print just this particular thing, then I have to add a null character at the end. So this is one thing you need to be careful about when you are creating character arrays, especially if you're using characters to create a character arrays and not a string, then you have to have a last element as a null character. So now you'd see that all the things would work. All 3 are printing 28 minutes as expected. If you don't have this character, then you can expect some garbage to come out. So if let's say I didn't have a character here and I just run this program, not the null character. Oops, I should have a space at least in here. So this represents space character. And you can see 28 minutes space, 28 minutes. This could have been anything actually. 28 minutes is what's in the memory after that. That's why I bring it up. But this could have been any garbage until C finds the null character. So that's how the character arrays are represented in memory. Now let's go ahead and do one small thing. Now look at the next puzzle. I have in 28 minutes assigned to a character array and also a pointer, and I'm printing the size of both of these. What would be the output? Think about it and come back. Welcome back. So what would be the size of, what would be the value which would be printed? So if I look at it, the output which is printed is array is 12 and pointer is 8. So the size of the array usually prints whenever you do a size of on an array. So this is the name of an array. So this is not a pointer. This is an internally it's a pointer, but as far as this program is concerned, this is a name of an array. When you do a size of on a array, then it prints the real size of that particular array. Let's just say if this was an integer array. So let's just think this was an integer array with 5 elements. So int numbers is equal to 1, 2, 3. In my implementation, the size of an integer is 4. Let's go ahead and print this. So you'd see that it's 12. So there are 3 elements in this array. The size of each integer is 4. So 3 into 4, 12. That's what is printed. When I print the name of a character array, the size of each character in my implementation of C which I'm using is 1. So it prints 12. That represents 12 characters. However, the size of the pointer, when it's a pointer, name pointer is a pointer and not an array. The size of the pointer is the size of whatever pointer it is. So the size of a pointer will not vary whether it's pointing to number or anything else. So let's just say I'm creating an int pointer. Int pointer. And I would want to print the size of int pointer and not the array. So let's say I want to print the size of int pointer, and this is char pointer. Right? So let's make it char pointer. This is char pointer, and this is a char pointer. So what would be the output? Think about it. It's 8. The size of the pointer is the same irrespective of what it's pointing to. So whether it's pointing to a character, whether it's pointing to an integer, whether it's pointing to a structure, a pointer is just the address of a memory location, and thereby the size of it will not change. However, the size of a character is different from the size of an integer. A character in my implementation is size 1. An integer is size 4 bytes. So there you go. That's about the different things about arrays and character pointers. Until the next set of puzzles. Bye. If you are preparing for C interview, we have a complete C interview guide available. And if you are preparing for a C aptitude test,
Then we have C puzzles for interview as well. You can find the links to this in the description of this video. If you loved this video, then we are sure you'd love our other courses as well. We have more than 10 GitHub repositories with examples on C, Spring, Java, basic web application, Maven, Mockito. Whenever you are in need for examples, you can look these up. We have a number of courses created on ChalkStreet as well. You can search for in 28 minutes in chalkstreet.com, and there you go. Right now we have 3 different courses in here. I'm sure there will be a lot more courses and we have a lot of courses on C, Java, Spring, and a lot of Java related frameworks and web applications on Udemy as well. You might like some of the most watched videos on our YouTube channel. We have courses on design patterns, web applications, Maven, Spring, Eclipse, and web applications as well. Good luck with your learning. All the best for you. Until next time, bye bye.